were introduced in 2018. They are a woman aged 40 and a man aged 62. The woman is an Army private in the Australian Defence Force. The AFP arrested the married couple yesterday morning at their Everton Park home in Brisbane. They have been charged with one count each of preparing for an espionage offence, which carries a maximum penalty of 15 years imprisonment. They will appear before Brisbane Magistrates Court today. The Counter Foreign Interference Task Force, which includes AFP, ASIO and other Commonwealth partners, has dedicated significant resources and capability to Operation Burgazada. The AFP will allege the individuals worked together to access Australian Defence Force material that related to Australia's national security interests. We allege the woman was undertaking non-declared travel to Russia whilst she was on long-term leave from the Australian Defence Force. We allege that while she was in Russia, she instructed her husband, who remained in Australia, on how to log into her official work account from their Brisbane home. We allege her husband would access requested material and would send to his wife in Russia. We allege they sought that information with the intention of providing it to Russian authorities. Whether that information was handed over remains a key focus of our investigation. There are a couple of critical points that I want to make today. This alleged criminality has been disrupted. Currently, no significant compromise has been identified. Our Five Eyes partners and the Australian Government can be confident that the robust partnerships within the Counter Foreign Interference Task Force mean we will continue to identify and disrupt espionage and foreign interference activity. I want to thank the very clever members of the AFP, ASIO and those individuals in the task force for their ingenuity and determination. Finally, I'll also take an opportunity to speak to the public and separately state actors. Firstly, to the Australian public, espionage is not a victimless crime and it is certainly growing. It has the potential to impact on Australia's sovereignty, safety and way of life. It happens in the shadows and the daylight, and I ask Australians to call the National Security Hotline on 1800 123 400 if they feel something does not seem right. Secondly, we know Western democracies, including Australia, are being targeted by state actors, but Australia's intelligence and law enforcement agencies have the laws, capability and tradecraft to identify these spies and those seeking to undermine Australia's interests. So my direct warning is this: we know who you are likely already exposed. You will get a knock on your door and it will be either from someone wearing this patch on their shoulder or from one of our other national security agencies. You will face embarrassment and potentially a very lengthy term of imprisonment. I'll now hand over to the Director-General of ASIO, Mike Burgess, to make comments.
Thank you, Rhys. ASIO is Australia's spy catcher. It's a responsibility we take extremely seriously. If you're spying in this country, we're looking for you. If you're being spied on in this country, we're looking out for you. I acknowledge the work of the Australian Federal Police and the Counter Foreign Interference Task Force, as well as the other ASIO teams that undertook a lengthy, patient and complex investigation. I also want to commend Defence for its security awareness that led to ASIO and the task force to intervene early and control this operation. This case reflects and demonstrates an effective security culture, not a deficient one. I will make no further comment on this particular case because I appreciate the charges have not been tested in a court and we must respect the presumption of innocence. Instead, I will make 4 general points about the threats facing Australia and ASIO's work to counter them. First, the espionage threat is real. Multiple countries are seeking to steal Australia's secrets. We cannot be naive and we cannot be complacent. Espionage is not some quaint Cold War notion. Espionage damages our economy and degrades our strategic advantage. It has catastrophic real-world consequences. Foreign intelligence services are capable, determined and patient. They play the long game. The problem for them is ASIO does too. And that brings me to my second point. ASIO is on the case. The ASIO Act makes our responsibilities clear. If you're conducting espionage in this country, we will detect you and we will deal with you. Normally, that is through intelligence-led disruptions, but when we can support a prosecution, we will support a prosecution. Third, security is a shared responsibility. The scale and sophistication of this threat facing Australia requires and demands individuals, governments and industries to take security seriously. I know Defence understands this. Every day they work with my organisation ASIO to protect our military capabilities and secure Australia's secrets. Fourth and finally, I want to speak directly to the operatives of Russian intelligence services. This year marks the 70th anniversary of the Petrov defections. 2 Russian spies gave ASIO and our closest allies the name of Russian assets in Western countries. If you want to share your secrets, please reach out. ASIO is always listening. Thank you. We're happy to take your questions.
Gentlemen, just on the sleeper agents themselves, can I ask, did they arrive in Australia together? Were they married here in Australia or elsewhere? How long have they been in Australia? And how long has the Russian woman been in the ADF?
So they've both been in Australia for more than 10 years. The woman obtained Australian citizenship in 2016 and her husband obtained Australian citizenship in 2020. And she has been employed in the Australian Army, in the Australian Defence Force for several years as an information systems technician.
How was this missed in vetting?
Well, that's a matter that part of our investigation with ASIO.
I can jump in there, Reece. I respectfully suggest that vetting is not a solution that stops problems, because it depends on what you say. How is it missed? If you meet the requirements to get a security clearance, you'll get a security clearance. But that doesn't mean to say the security journey stops at this point. And in this case, because of defence and security awareness, ASIO and the task force and then the AFP were able to intervene and control this operation.
How did you become aware of the operation?
All I will say is because of defence awareness.
Do you believe that the woman entered the ADF with a specific intention of removing espionage?
That's a part of the investigation that we will be looking at within the task force.
And can you be more specific about the kind of material that they have obtained?
Well, as I said, no significant compromise has been identified at this stage.
Commissioner, how was someone with a security clearance able to travel to Russia without your knowledge or being aware and actively tracking her?
Well, that's part of, again, the investigation that we're going through. At this stage, there was some misleading on her behalf of where she was allegedly at and what country. And so it was really the work of the task force that were able to identify what actually had occurred.
Can you say a little bit more about the nature of the information that she was accessing in the system? You say there wasn't any significant compromise. Clearly, we'd like to know if there was any risk to any personnel from the information that she was gaining, or any risk to any operations from the information that she was getting.
Yeah, that does form part of the investigation as well. At this stage currently, as I said, no significant compromise. However, we're going to go down every avenue of inquiry.
Did they retain their Russian citizenship?
What I'm able to say is they had Russian passports.
Were they married in Australia? Did they come here married?
Yeah, that's something I'd probably have to get back to you on that one.
But do you allege, just going back to my initial question, do you allege that they came here more than 10 years ago with the intent of committing this, or do you think that they, and perhaps the Director General here is better qualified to answer. Do you think that they were recruited by the FSB in more recent times?
So as the Commissioner has said, obviously when they've arrived in this country, all that details is still subject to further investigation and ongoing investigation. We have some information, but obviously we're still together piecing that in terms of when did this start, when did that journey start. The other thing I'll reinforce is because of Defence's awareness, it allowed us to intervene early and control the operation.
Do you suspect that anyone else in Australia is involved in this?
At this stage, the investigation hasn't identified any other individuals, but that's not to mean that there isn't. And as you know, often when we make an arrest, it's the beginning of the investigation.
Can you say whether they were involved with any Russian diplomats in Australia?
Well, again, at this stage, that's something that we'll be looking at as well.
How can Russian citizens be able to access sensitive information or any person with other citizenships outside of Five Eyes, for example? Is there going to be a review about who can access what now?
So security clearance have specific requirements on them, including being an Australian citizen, of course, people's cultural background and heritage and when they came to this country, and do they have a checkable background, and all those things are required for security decisions. That's part of the investigation, and internally we'll work with Defence to work through what's the teachable moment here, if there are any.
When you say you were able to control the operation after Defence told you, did that involve feeding misinformation, false information to this person who then passed on to the Russian authorities?
You'd appreciate, Andrew, I wouldn't go into the details of how we do that. Obviously, you picked up on the key point. Once we knew, we were able to control this to allow the task force to do their investigation and the police to work through what they needed to do.